Hey, welcome you on in to another episode of Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Pinnell alongside Mitchell Ballard to give you the latest in the sporting world. Mitch, the last time we were together, we saw 68 teams in the tournament. We are now down to a reduced amount heading into the Sweet 16. We have some state champions to christen in high school basketball, and we are nearing the end of one of the hottest tournaments we've had so far this year that's not in college basketball.
Yeah, Mitch, I was right in our last show to go ahead and just crumple up my paper bracket before the tournament even started because my bracket was going to be busted. And sure enough, it was busted. I can't wait to talk about all the madness that ensued in the round of 64 and 32 later on here in the show and some other things as we are now starting to turn the page, Mitch, to the spring.
Indeed. 2 games I was off already with my bracket with Furman beating Virginia. But before we get to that, we're going to remind you guys of what's happening this week in Big Time Sports. This is where we go over our upcoming broadcast schedule for what you can find on Big Time Sports, as well as other stuff you can find here. You can check out the Big Time Sports Show on Wednesday at 7 o'clock and Friday at 10 p.m. The Tuscarawas County area will be seeing the Tuscarawas Central Catholic Saints baseball team make a visit to the studio to talk with old Mellow Tones. Then on the Canton side, or the Stark County side, the Sandy Valley Cardinals baseball team will be visiting. You can find that broadcast on Thursday at 7:30 p.m. and Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. on cable TV Spectrum 15 and 989, as well as MCT 128. You can also go to our website, bigtimesportsohio.com or WIVMTV.com. You can find all of our latest stuff there. Our website's got the latest articles, videos, broadcasts, and then you can, of course, download the local broadcast network or LBN app. You can find us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram on Big Time Sports, and a bunch of other places at Mitch Pinnell, at Mitchell Ballard, pretty much everywhere else. On our website, we also just released our spring schedule for the upcoming year, baseball and softball galore. So be sure to check that one out. You might be seeing us at a couple of local games here coming up very soon, as we will be covering all the sports this upcoming spring. So, Mitch, we want to start off here, man, where down in Dayton this past weekend was very interesting because I was there for the first 2 days of the tournament, got to see a number of teams from across the state come down and try to either repeat as state champions or win it for the first time. A couple of first-time winners in there, or a couple of first long-time winners in there as well. Very interesting matchups in there. We saw a number of close games, saw a number of blowouts in there, and the team we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, Richmond Heights, getting it done in Division 4, man. They had a 29-0 third quarter in order to beat Convoy Crestview 70-26. A game, again, that the one we saw a few weeks ago against Cornerstone was close at halftime, and then they did what they had to do.
Mitch, this is an extremely talented team. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here because we've mentioned that since we started talking about the Spartans of Richmond Heights. But at the same time, not only are they talented, Mitch, they go in and they make halftime adjustments. And that is just so big at this point in the high school tournament, really in any sport, when you have the opportunity to make adjustments. And sure enough, a good team can go so far. But when you're as talented as they are and then go in and make the adjustments, and you saw it in the start of the third quarter, and you mentioned the giant run they went on and really put that game away when it was very close at halftime, just goes to show you why this team is now back-to-back state champs and has won 49 games in a row.
It's really unbelievable, and the stuff that they're able to do. I will say this, though. Their semifinal game was interesting because their semifinal game was one of the closest games they'd had all year. Ruggie came in. We talked about them before on the podcast where they had a 27-25 regional final win over Jackson Center, only scoring 2 points in the final quarter to advance. But I will say Ruggie gave them a bit of a game for the first 3 quarters, to the point where Richmond really seemed out of sorts at times. Ruggie was able to convert on a number of more baskets than they had been their last couple of games, and was very interesting to see that dynamic. It was kind of reminding people around me of a similar matchup about 20 years ago, where you saw St. Bernard Roger Bacon somehow keep up with a Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's squad that ended up losing the only state final loss they ever had in their 4 years together. But Heights came through in the fourth quarter. They forced Ruggie to make a couple of key mistakes, and they were able to close out that win. So congratulations to Richmond Heights. Also, congratulations to the Lutheran East basketball team of Cleveland Heights. They were able to win 67-61 against an Ottawa Glandorf squad that fought in double overtime to get to the final after beating Afrocentric 48-47. That game came down to the wire, a shot at the end, right at the buzzer that was deemed no good, even though it went in, would have given Afrocentric the victory. They checked in replay, and kudos to the replay officials because we'll get to it very soon. They did a great job from this past tournament, but Lutheran East getting to the championship, being able to pull off another victory there. In Division 2, Lutheran West was in the final, and unfortunately, they weren't so lucky against Akron Buchtel 59-57, a game in which we mentioned it. The replay officials went to the board after a shot that was made during a scramble in the closing seconds was deemed no good because it was out of his hand too late by 1/10 of a second, Mitch. It's kind of unbelievable how close that those sort of finals can come down to, because at first glance, to me, it was no good. But the one official called it good, and if we didn't have that sort of system in there, we would have been going right to overtime, and who knows what would have happened then.
Yeah, it's it's awesome to have the replay technology at this point in the tournament. Obviously, every game in the tournament matters, but these are just the magnitude of these games being a state semifinal, state championship game in Dayton, Ohio. Mitch, you hear every possession counts, literally every second counts, and in this case, every 10th of a second counted here. And listen, you make a call on the floor, you're confident in it for a reason, and then know you have the technology to go back if you missed the call and alter, whatever the call was on the floor if needed. And that's exactly what happened here. But what would have happened if this game went to overtime? Who knows? But that is something we will not know. And luckily, Buchtel was able to persevere after the replay.
First ever Akron Public School, by the way, to win the state tournament in the I mentioned the Akron area since Central Howard in 1986. We also had in Division 1 the matchup between Hoban and Pickerington Central. Pickerington Central arguably played one of the most competitive games of the semifinals, 57-53 over Centerville. That seemed like a state championship because that was the matchup last season where Pickerington Central was able to win the championship over Gabe Cupps and the Centerville squad. Gabe Cupps was the 2022 Ohio Mr. Basketball. This year's Ohio Mr. Basketball was Devin Royal of the Tigers. They were able to win that game in the rematch. And then they were stunned by a Hoban squad 53-47, Mitch, who not only is winning championships now in football, but they're winning them in boys basketball as well.
And just what a remarkable season for the Knights of Hoban, Mitch. They went through a gauntlet of a schedule, and we're going to get to it here in a second, but they probably played some of their tougher games through the district and the regional rounds up here in Northeast Ohio. And I mention that because, Mitch, the one thing all these teams that won state championships have in common this season, all Northeast Ohio schools. And listen, Hoban last year fell short in the regionals. This year, they made it a goal of theirs to return all the players they returned to get to Dayton. And once you get there, while you're there, you might as well win it. And sure enough, Hoban did that. You mentioned Mr. Basketball, Devin Royal for the state of Ohio, Ohio State commit. He was limited to 15 points and 8 rebounds. Hoban did a great job limiting him offensively. And really just what a remarkable job by Hoban. Just hats off to them. They earned it this year, and they took that sour taste in their mouth from last season and turn it around into ending the season on their own terms this year.
So we see those teams able to complete the mission. Some of the teams that did end up falling short, one of them in our area, and that was a Berlin Highlands squad that fought very hard to get into this tournament. Unfortunately, they were not able to overcome a run by Convoy Crestview, who ended up outlasting them in the third quarter handily. Highland made a bit of a comeback though at the end when everyone thought that the game was over, but it ended up being 69-63. So for the for another year, Highland falling short in the semifinals, which is unfortunate for them, but I'm sure a number of those guys will be back next season. And Mitch, as we come through another year of this is the third year that the tournament has been held in Dayton, Ohio, at the UD Arena. Very nice facilities, I should mention. It's a very interesting sort of scenario where I don't know if you've attended any of the state tournaments in the last 3 seasons, but if you have, what are some of the key differences for you between those matchups, but in comparison to the ones down in Columbus, usually where in our era, it was at Value City Arena. I'm sure for others, it was at Old St. John's.
I think when you look at the tournament being held in Columbus, obviously at Ohio State, it's just very cool there because you're on the campus of Ohio State. Everybody pretty much knows Ohio State. You get to play where you see a lot of all-time greats play. And you're also in downtown Columbus, Mitch. There's so much to do around the area. Looking at Dayton, I like the venue a lot better. It's a little bit smaller. It feels more packed no matter what division is playing. It's a little more updated, at least in my opinion. It looks like that when you're there. I don't know really the specifications and dates of when everything was updated or renovated. I just think a lot of people that aren't happy with it, it has to do with the fact that there isn't nearly as much to do around the arena as there is in downtown Columbus, Ohio, and at the University of Ohio State. But personally, besides it being a little further away and not being so central in Ohio, I personally love playing at UD Arena in Dayton, Ohio. I think it's amazing. I thought it was beautiful last year when I got to go down and watch some of the girls tournament. We'll have to see. A lot of this nowadays, Mitch, isn't as centralized as it used to. Look at baseball. State championships are played at Canal Park in Akron. Football state championships were at Ohio State. Now they're at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. I kind of like it. I get everybody wants it to be equal for each other, but you're never going to make everybody happy. And if this is doing well in terms of numbers for attendance and revenue for the OHSAA, it's not going to change.
Fair enough. UD's arena's renovation, I think it was back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, and it is a 50-year-old arena, even younger, I think, than Value City, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, it is a case of location, not just for the people being able to do things in that away from the arena, I should say, but also the fact that you're not really at the center of the state anymore. Columbus is always considered the central hub, and now it's more so to the southwest, if you will. Although it is a very interesting location compared to the likes of the ones we've had in the past. If you go back and look at the OHSAA programs that you get every year at the state tournament, they mention locations in Cleveland. They mention locations in Kent. Now, granted, these are back in like the 30s and 40s when the tournament was really starting to get going. They had it going in the Springfield area. I think Springfield, Kent, Cleveland, and then it's pretty much just been Columbus and Dayton since then. But it's always been a very interesting case for many of the teams in this tournament. I'm hoping that the tournament continues a good tradition into next year. So that is what we will end the segment there. We will go into segment 2 right after these messages here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week, visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partner with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Vive Auto Sales, located on West High Avenue in New Philadelphia and Cleveland Avenue in Canton, is a used car dealership committed to getting financing for everyone. We give every customer that walks in our showrooms a prime buying experience, no matter their credit score or financial situation. Current inventory can be viewed at www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vive Auto Sales.
Get out of the dugout and onto the field with help from Velocity Sports. Velocity Sports is a baseball and softball training academy with locations in North Canton and Canal Fulton. Our new Canal Fulton features 10,000 square feet of training space with 6 cages for hitting and pitching and a large commercial weight room. Velocity Sports will sharpen your skills and get you in the starting lineup. For more info, go to velosportsohio.com.
All right, here we are back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Bala. Mitch, you mentioned at the top of the show. I'm going over all the games that I missed. I had a bad first round. Actually, no. Once the second day got in, I got most of the East ones right. I got a good chunk of the Midwest ones right. It was really the South was where things kind of got crazy. I mean, there was 2 games in I mentioned. Virginia losing to Furman on an inbounds pass that should have just been called a timeout, should have been held, and it isn't. And Furman makes a 3. Good for Furman, man. Once I saw that, I'm like, you know what? Fine. We can go on with the rest of the upsets. And we did go on with the rest of the upsets because we saw for the second time in our lives, after I didn't think we would ever see it in our lives, a second 16 seed beating a 1 seed. Fairleigh Dickinson. I know they're out of the tournament already at this time of the recording our podcast. I don't care. This is one of this Mitch may top. Here's the thing. Virginia losing to UMBC is going to be the more iconic one because it was the first. And the way they did it. They kicked their ass in the second half. Fairleigh Dickinson beating Purdue is much more of an upset than UMBC's was. And I'm happy to see you agree with me.
100%. And like, it was probably always going to happen, right? A 16 eventually beats a 1. I mean,
no,
saying something is going to happen eventually is hard to say because I don't know if we're ever going to see a perfect bracket because it's like 900 quintillion different outcomes you could do in filling out a perfect bracket. Yeah. This Purdue loss, Mitch, in my opinion, is worse than Virginia being the first one to go. Because being the first one to go, like we said, it was probably going to happen eventually. Now it was your goal not to let it happen again, let alone happen to the smallest team in the country, the team with, if I'm not mistaken, the worst schedule in the country, 364 out of 364, and a team that should not have even been in the tournament. They didn't even win their conference. They got in because the team that won their conference in Merrimack isn't eligible because they jumped up from a division. And this is a team that played in the first 4 in Dayton and then beats Purdue. The smallest team in the country beats the team with a 7'4" center who is up for Player of the Year. And Mitch, you have to give credit to Fairleigh Dickinson. They played the style of basketball they wanted to play. They pressured Purdue the entire game. How many times had we seen this year in Big Ten basketball? If you pressured the guards at Purdue, they did not like it. And they did it right away.
No.
And they fronted Zach Edey and they kind of took him out of the game. Now, it's also an indictment on Purdue because Zach Edey, I don't think, had a shot over the last 6 minutes of the game, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. If you had another center that was his size, I get it. When you have nobody that's even remotely close to him in terms of height, and he's up for Player of the Year, and he's carried your team this far, how do you not let him touch the ball? Purdue now, Mitch, has lost to a 13 seed, a 15 seed, and now a 16 seed. Matt Painter has done a phenomenal job at Purdue. But Mitch, it's crazy to think a team that just won the Big Ten championship could have a coach on the hot seat. But when there's a quote that says what is it? It's from Hoosiers. It's basketball in 49 other states. And then it's Indiana. You can't be losing games like this. And not in
St. Peter's was the
3 years in a row now.
seed
They've gotten upset
that they
I'm trying
lost
to think who they lost to. Was the 13 seed last year, obviously, with St. Peter's. This year, Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or Texas. Yep. And that was in Indiana. Don't forget, that's when there was a bubble. You want to talk about there's really no home court. That was pretty much as close to home court advantage as you can get in madness in college basketball. So this is now 3 straight embarrassing losses without taking credit away from the 3 teams that beat them, obviously. But when you are a staple in the Big Ten, you are constantly ranked high in March Madness with the seeds, and now you've bowed out 3 years in a row to seeds 13, 15, and 16. I know I didn't read it. I saw a lot of people that did. The blogs, the posts, the articles out in West Lafayette. It's not good. It is not good in Indiana. But I do want to say I give Matt Painter a ton of credit, Mitch, because I don't know if you saw it after the game, post-game press conference. This man could have easily answered questions at the bare minimum and left. After they said final question, he waited around to take other question a reporter had to make sure he gave him the time of day. This is a guy who just got upset as a 1 seed, second time ever.
So you're saying that it's likely
sure
not
to stay
him
there and do his job
that was the one that
as possible.
punched
so I give him
basketball-sized hole
but
in a
something's gonna have
whiteboard
to
after
change
the
for him.
game in the locker room.
I'm going to guess no. My first instinct would probably be Edey, just because of how large he was and how big the hole was. But I'm
it
not
doesn't
going to
seem
just
like
pin it
someone's
on
hand
Zach
has to be
Edey. I don't
broken
know who
after
punched
that.
the hole. It was a
There's
very
no way
massive
that somebody's
hole
hand is just
that was
still
punched in that
intact after
whiteboard.
a rage in which only a 16 seed over a 1 seed upset could entail. And you know what the thing is too? Virginia made up for most of the embarrassment of losing to a 16 seed by going back and winning the championship next year. I don't expect Purdue to be a front runner for the title next year unless they get a great recruiting class back in, or these guys return, and who knows what's going to happen there. I mean, other games that we were looking at throughout the rest of the slate here, a lot of the top seeds still in the mix. You got your Alabamas and your Houstons. Some of the teams we kind of undersold, man. I'm looking back. Miami and San Diego State, both in the Sweet 16 now. They're going to take on the number 1 seeds, but most of our pick of Charleston over San Diego State was based on our talk with Dalton Boland, which you can find on our channel. And then Miami, though. Miami's an interesting one. They pulled that victory over Drake. They beat number 4 Indiana, who looked like one of the hottest teams going into the tournament initially. But I give the Hurricanes a lot of credit. They're making a run in this one.
Now listen, right hand up. I was wrong. I told you there was a few teams I was just not impressed with, Virginia being one. I know you and I kind of fought over who you were taking between them and Furman. I told you I wasn't buying Virginia. I wasn't buying Tennessee, and I wasn't buying Miami. Miami got past Drake and then throttled Indiana Sunday night in the round of 32. I mean, Mitch, Indiana, the way they played Kent State, it was a rough game to watch. Just really made me feel like, oh my gosh, this is a team that might mess around and make a deep run here. And then Miami came in, completely took the wind out of Indiana after they made a run. I was thoroughly impressed with the Hurricanes. Now, the matchup they have going forward is going to be one of the toughest remaining, but yeah, Miami has looked very, very good after getting by Drake. And I mean, other games, I mean, look, the one region, Mitch, I think you and I thought was going to be the hardest to pick, really, has been all chalk, except for Kansas losing in the round of 32. And that's the Midwest region, I believe. All the top seeds advancing, with Kansas being upset by Arkansas. And it is what it is. That obviously we had mentioned it's hard to see a team repeat. It hasn't happened since 06-07 with Florida. The likelihood that it ever happens again, just because you have to try to get kids to stay for so long or have just an insane amount of talent, come in, which Kansas obviously can do that.
No doubt. I mean, the Xavier
Remarkable,
Texas
but really the
matchup we have in
Midwest
Sweet
region, the
16
one that
coming
we
up here
thought was the
2 versus
toughest,
3
is the one that's
is
been
interesting to me
the
because those
easiest
teams
to kind of
have
pick if you're
been
just going off the seeds.
a little oversold in the past, but I think this particular crop of players are very interesting to me. And and whoever wins this game, I think could give Houston a serious matchup in the Elite Eight should the Cougars move on, because I expect them to beat Miami. But Miami, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, we mentioned Fairleigh Dickinson. They're already out. They're going to play. They already played FAU. They had to spoil the fun, so now they're going to play a Tennessee team that dismantled Duke. I know Duke's. It's very rare where you see Tennessee a higher seed over Duke in a tournament, but the Volunteers do what they had to do. The Gonzaga UCLA matchup in the Sweet 16. It feels like a matchup that's too early for the namesake that we're going to get, but it's very interesting. Kansas State versus again another team that I thought was such a sleeper pick. Marquette getting upset by Michigan State. Tom Izzo's squad will take on a Wildcats team that beat the other Wildcats team in Kentucky, and then of course we have to talk about the Ivy Leagues because they would want us to talk about them. Princeton, look, man, the Tigers. You beat Arizona. And then you beat Dennis Gates' Missouri squad. I was impressed by that. You beat them handily, too. They kicked their ass in the second half. And now they're going to play Creighton. Creighton, a sneaky 6 seed, who upset Baylor, a 3 seed, which is one that I'm very curious in seeing where that's going to go. Sure.
I want to just quickly go back to Texas before I talk about Michigan State. Mitch, this is a team that was in a lot of turmoil early on in the season, obviously dismissing their head coach, Chris Beard, who had that deep run with Texas Tech a few years ago, obviously had some legal matters that have been now dismissed. And they have Rodney Terry, their interim head coach. Mitch, there's been a lot of news out there, whether it's leaks or media, saying that Texas isn't going to bring this guy back. How, if Texas wins and gets to the Elite Eight, let alone if they keep going, how do you not bring this man back? Is it really national championship or bust for an interim head coach that took a team that had high expectations, fell off a little bit after their head coach was fired, and now has them playing high-level basketball? And now you heard the players say, we're doing this for him. We want him to have this job. Mitch, I feel like there's programs nowadays, and Texas especially in football, that get in their own way because they're like, oh, we have to go get this big name. We have to have a big name here. When sometimes you don't need a big name. And so I'm very intrigued to see how Texas does the rest of the tournament. And if they make a deep run and get to the Final Four, is it really going to be they let this coach that really helped them turn the season around go? Or are they going to reward him and give him a contract to be the head coach? I mean, the players obviously like him. It's just very interesting, and I don't know why it's always Texas.
Yeah, Rodney Terry is getting the Herman Boone treatment. I'm not saying that's what's
just
happening,
something
but,
I wanted to throw it your way.
Getting the Herman Boone treatment over there at Texas, but it would be interesting to have him stay on if he gets this opportunity. Again, I'm looking through all the matchups here, just seeing which ones. I guess we could take some quick picks right now. I mean, if we're going to go into, we're not. I'm going to save that for the next show because that's going to be one that we can fill in some time. But in the meantime, we're going to see all these matchups here, and also on the women's side too. We should mention up some of those ones as well, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, just trying to make sure I go over these ones. Yes, Ohio State still in the tournament, number 3 seed. They're going to take on number 2 UConn on Saturday at 4. Ohio State had a bit of trouble in their first matchup against James Madison, and then pulled out a close one over number 6 North Carolina. But Ohio State getting the job done when they need to, and it's going to be a tall task to take on such a blue blood program in the women's game like the Huskies. But I could see Ohio State pulling this off, even though it's very rare, much more rare in the women's tournament for lower seeds to get those upset wins. Although we did see this past weekend, I believe it was Indiana was upset in the tournament. Yes.
Indiana and Stanford, 2 number 1 seeds gone down without reaching the Sweet 16, Mitch. I believe it's only happened 2 times or something crazy like that before. And Indiana, believe it or not, losing at home. That's the difference between girls and boys tournament play. Obviously, the top seeds get to play a number of games in their home arena. the state of Indiana is down bad this weekend, Mitch, because both schools lost to Miami of Florida, which I believe is the 7th time in the history of men's and women's tournament that a team in both girls and boys basketball lost to the same school in the tournament. So Miami knocking off the Hoosiers in boys and girls basketball in the tournament. Listen, South Carolina, Mitch, I don't know how they're going to be beat, but that's the best part about this tournament basketball. Anything can happen. They're obviously undefeated, number one all year long. Ohio State now plays, like you mentioned, UConn. I obviously hope the Lady Buckeyes win. Obviously, Jackson grad and Stark County native Taylor Mikesell there. She had a very good game yesterday in that 2-point win, 71-69 over North Carolina. The Lady Buckeyes are going to have their hands full. But when you look at Seattle region number 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4 all left. Virginia Tech, UConn, Ohio State, Tennessee. That is going to be a very interesting region to see who comes out of there. And then Greenville number 2, Mitch, the LSU Lady Tigers are a team that played very well all season long in the SEC with South Carolina. They lost twice to them. It got bumped, and they have a player of the year candidate on that team. I'm intrigued now to see if LSU can make a run to the Final Four now with Indiana, the top seed, being knocked out. But hey, as much fun as we love the men's tournament, March Madness, folks, the girls tournament is equally as entertaining, especially when it gets down to this point because of the teams and the tradition that are there.
I was going to ask you, where do you stand on the tournament having the first couple of rounds be at the home arenas?
Girls as well as the boys, because
there seem to be some arenas that were really struggling to fill capacities at these bigger domes, and I could see the tournament maybe being like, all right, well, we want to have these max capacity arenas because that'll give us more opportunities to sell tickets compared to something like the, Value City Arena, whereas you take it to a neutral site, you'll be able to get more fans there. But aside from the Fairleigh Dickinson game, I don't recall a first round matchup that really had a major crowd that really got into it. I would think.
Yeah, and like to your point of would they play at home courts or home arenas? They kind of are to a degree, just not on their actual campus. Let's keep in mind Auburn, a 9 seed. Mitch, they played their games in Birmingham, Alabama. Like that's these regions and locations are set up in advance. Because like we already know where the Final Four is next year for the women's, and I believe next year for the men's as well. They have to set things up like this because obviously then you run yourself into the girls next year in Cleveland. The 2024 Final Four is in Cleveland. You have to schedule that so far in advance because if you're playing at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, you have to make sure the Cavs aren't in town. So that's the men. I get it because I agree with you. There's some crowds, Mitch. It's just like, where's everybody at? I know for a fact if it was still up in Cleveland, it was in Columbus this year, I would go watch games in Cleveland. It's a lot of fun, but I just wonder if you have to vote on something like that and how teams would really feel, because you wonder if Purdue got to host, would Fairleigh Dickinson have gone into Mackey Arena and beaten the Boilermakers? We'll never know, but it would have been a lot harder probably because I'm assuming it would have been a sold out crowd with the Boilermaker fans going crazy. But
regarding
I don't hate the idea. I just don't know how it would work out.
Matchups. Oh, I completely forgot about it. Maybe it'll come to me later. In the meantime, we'll go to our final segment, or our second to last segment, where we have a special guest coming up, and we'll continue our ways here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
And we welcome you back into the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It is now time to bring in a special guest to the podcast with the upcoming high school baseball season coming up. We decided to take a spotlight to one of our local coaches. It is Stephen Scott of Newcomerstown High School's baseball program. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, Coach, you go into a new season, a new slate of IVC play as well as non-conference affairs this season for a Trojan squad that has been building up the past 2 seasons, the first 2 seasons of yours with the Trojans. Where do you see this team in its growth from where you first started in year 1 to where a lot of your guys now upperclassmen are going into year 3?
You know, every year you just want to build. I took over a team that had won 6 games in 5 years, and it's no fault of the past coach before me. Coach Hendershot did a phenomenal job down there. But this time, we have juniors, seniors that now know the expectations, know the program, a slew of new players coming in that I'm really excited about. I think the big advantage we have this year is while we're still going to be young, our older guys are leaders. They have the systems down. They know what we want to do. They know the expectations we have. And I think that makes a big difference when you're, building a program, trying to keep getting better and better.
Coach, you mentioned some of the guys coming back, obviously some leaders coming back, but you also have a sophomore coming back in Cage Miller, first team IVC North last year as a freshman, only a sophomore this year. Talk about the development from him as a freshman to where he is now entering his sophomore season and just how excited you are to have him back and really 2 more years after this, but just the strides he's already taken after 1 year playing varsity baseball.
Yeah, anytime you can return a first-team IVC player is huge, and the IVC is very competitive, so to get any first-teamer is huge. Cage Miller comes from the travel ball world. He's worked extensively with a good friend of mine, a phenomenal coach, and David Gray, to continue to get better and better. So it definitely excited about him. I think his bat's going to have more pop this year. He's a wrestler. Last year, he started the season at 132 after cutting weight. This year, he did not cut weight this year. Comes in at 168, 170, which is where he should be with his frame. So the power is still there. The arm strength is still there. It's not a growing pain we're going to have to grow with last year. Anytime you have a kid come in at 132, the arm strength's just not there. So we're excited to have that power and pop right off the rip. He averages about a 2.0, 2.1 pop time to second base, still getting quicker. And, when you have that behind the plate, it really takes a lot of pressure off your pitchers to get the ball there quick.
Well, Coach, not only do you have Cage on your returning roster this year, you have Nash Bricker coming in as back, and honorable mention all IVC last year. He'll be a junior this upcoming season. Take us through what he's been able to develop in the offseason. What do you think he'll be able to provide for the Trojans this year?
Nash had a freak injury last year against Malvern, 3rd game of the year. Hits an opposite field double, pops his hip out of place, then goes to knee problems. We didn't really have him a lot last year. Honorable mention guy, just works hard, does everything he's asked of. He's got a 6'4" frame, weighs in at about 190. But one of the most flexible kids you have. Anytime you have a tall kid at first base, you know, it really helps. But Nash is able to go, you know, 7-10 split to pick balls out of the dirt, takes a lot of pressure off your defense. So really excited to have him back for a full season. You know, Bo Black last year did a phenomenal job stepping in for him. But, you know, when you have a 6'4" returning letterman at first base, takes a lot of pressure, really anchor the infield defense. We're excited to have him back.
And Coach, what about some other student athletes coming in? Do you have any freshmen that are already making some impacts, as we're only a week away from your guys' first game? I mean, it's crazy to think that the season's going to start here this week for some teams in Northeast Ohio, obviously weather permitting. But what else does it look like with some seniors and juniors coming back as well? The new dogs.
You know, I think it's the freshmen I'm most, you know, impressed with at this point. For the first time in my career down here, and granted, it's only year 3, so not exactly a big pool to pick from here. But, you know, we have 4 travel ball kids coming in. And, you know, in the IVC small school, we're Division 4 this year. We dropped down only 111 boys in Newcomerstown High School. Anytime you bring travel ball kids in, you know, and, you know, Mitch, as you know, from coaching travel baseball, you know how competitive it is out there. And so when you bring guys like that in, it really, you know, makes a difference. We have 4 freshmen I'm really excited about. Zane Popadak, Brody Brickles, Leroy Raber, and Connor Smoji, you know, all utility guys. You know, I think we're going to have 3 freshmen starting in the infield. But when they play at a very high level last year, they're getting ready to play and be major contributors this year. I'm excited to watch Zane Popadak pitch. You know, kid's already throwing mid-70s as a freshman. Leroy Raber's been a phenomenal second baseman at this point. And then, you know, we have a really true shortstop this year in Connor Smoji. Really smooth, understands the position. I'm very excited to have him. And then with Brody Brickles being a center fielder, probably the best outfielder I've had to this point, just a true outfielder that understands, you know, what his job is in center field. You know, those are 4 dogs that I'm excited to. They're all going to be major contributors this year. And, you know, we're going to have some growing pains. You know, there's a difference from 14U travel baseball to varsity baseball. That's a given, especially when other teams are going to be rolling out senior heavy lineups. But I think once we get past those 2-3 week growing pains, I think it's going to gel. I think it's going really well together.
Coach, kind of taking from what you talked about with travel baseball, I mean, a lot of guys obviously come up for your squad through a lot of youth leagues and potential travel situations as well. I mean, when you look at where your guys are now, my question to you is, what do you exactly look for your boys to develop when they're younger to potentially be able to be very well set for when they join your roster when they're in their 15, 16-year-old set?
You know, it starts with the youth. And, you know, when you can get kids just involved in baseball, you know, that's really important. Travel baseball is not for everyone. You know, sometimes, you know, we have a lot of 3-sport athletes, and, you know, those 4 athletes you just mentioned, those are all baseball only guys. You know, if you're, you know, Newcomerstown has a lot of 3-sport athletes, travel baseball is not possible for all of them. You know, the Pony League down there does a nice job for what it is. We had a couple kids coming in from the Pony League. You know, with rec ball versus travel baseball, the game is faster. And so we've kind of see that with, you know, our rec ball kids coming in. We're happy to have them. But usually it takes a little bit of time for them to adjust to the speed of the high school game. Nothing wrong with that. That's why we have a JV team. But I think they're going to develop quickly. I think they're all going to be major contributors. You know, we only have 19 in the program this year, you know, 19 kids, and we're running a JV and a varsity schedule. So we're going to be thin at times, but that JV is so crucial to develop not only just the kids coming in from, you know, the little league and whatnot, but just guys in the program that are just taking longer to develop. You know, I only played 1 year of varsity baseball. Mechanics were crap my junior year. So JV is crucial to the success of a program, and that's why I'm happy to have it back.
Now, Coach, excuse me as my connection drops, so I'm not sure what Mitch asked you, but looking at your guys' schedule that I'd seen earlier, we had talked about this actually last summer, you know, both of us coaching against each other during the summer season. You guys try to play a tougher non-conference schedule to both show the kids where you want to be as a program, you know, while they're there, obviously, as soon as possible, obviously, sometimes later on down the line, but also test themselves instead of playing opponents that really don't get you better. How much pride do you take in scheduling tougher opponents? And just for the people out there that I know there's always parents, why are we traveling to Canton McKinley, or why are we going to St. Thomas Aquinas? Just your reasoning for scheduling these tougher non-conference games.
Yeah. You know, being in D3 last year, you know, we had some, you know, off-field issues, injuries that killed us. You know, it was a rough year last year, but when you go into this year, when you can get those non-conference games in there, you know, I used to coach at Canton McKinley. Coach Zomer's a great friend of mine. Granted, we played in the snow last year. We were the only 2 teams in Northeast Ohio to play. Couldn't do that again this year. I think my kids might have had a mutiny against me had that happened. But when you can get, those top teams in there, McKinley's a very, very competitive program in Northeast Ohio. When you can go travel there, and you get to play at Munson Stadium, and that's huge for kids. It's a great facility. They did a phenomenal job over there. But you want to show the kids what it's like. Being in Newcomerstown, when you only have 19 kids in the program, very minimal travel ball experience, they don't get to go see what the top level looks like. So it's important to go see that. And, I think, especially when you get to the tournament in May, if you're able to put that run together, you got to be battle tested. Going to play a team that really isn't very competitive in the non-league or, just isn't up to the level that you hope to be at, you're going to be in trouble, to say the least. And so it's important to be battle tested. Yeah, we're going to take a few lumps and bruises along the way, but it's important to have that level of competition to be exposed to it. If you're not exposed to that come May, you're going to be in trouble.
Well, Coach, while Mitch figures out the connection there, I mean, when you look at some of the earlier parts of the schedule and some of the teams you'll be matching up with, I mean, what are some of the ones? And we're not asking you like, oh, which ones you have circled on your calendar, but who are some of the ones that you think are going to be particularly important when you get down to the earlier parts of the in-conference schedule, which can be very interesting. You're kind of in season, still trying to find yourself and, weather permitting as well, too.
I think I have a friend up at Mansfield Senior. That's a great friend of mine. Mansfield's coming down to Newcomerstown, about an hour and 45-minute drive. Really thankful for them to come on down there. I think that's a big one. Obviously Southeast up in Ravenna, they got a really top end player over there, and Nate Muncie is a phenomenal player. When you play Massillon Perry, even though Massillon Perry had a rougher year last year, they are still a top dog in the Fed. They're going to compete hard. And then, when you add in Sandy Valley and Claymont, schools from the IVC South that are, still highly competitive, those are games you want to go out there and compete. Usually when you go play those bigger schools, obviously they're going to be deeper. When you play those games, you got to be scrappy. You got to be willing to bunt, hit and run, make the routine plays. Those are the teams you cannot make mistakes against. And I think it's important to go up there, when we get to the later half of the season, we're playing some teams more like us. We can't make those mistakes. You can't give those teams extra outs. This is once you do the breaks fall off. It was a 2-0 game after the first inning against McKinley last year, and breaks fell off, made 2 errors. All of a sudden it's 9-0, and you just, against a team like McKinley and those top end dogs, you can't give them those extra outs. And so really it comes down to being battle tested and being able to make the routine plays.
Coach, we talked about it. You and I have talked about it. 7 wins the last 2 seasons since you've taken over. Before that, it was 5 wins combined in 6 seasons. As the head coach of the program at Newcomerstown, just what are your expectations? What are you hoping to build off of after last season as you head into the 2023 spring season? And what could everybody out there, the viewers and listeners, expect to see from the Newcomerstown Trojans this spring?
I think you're going to see a really scrappy team. We're not afraid to bunt. We're not afraid to hit and run. We're not afraid to take risks. We're really emphasizing base running this year. Ball hit to right field, guy on first, we're taking 3. You're going to see a scrappy ball team out there. That's just how we're going to have to compete. There's nothing wrong with that. But as far as depth goes, we lack a little bit. Only 19 kids. At a certain point, there's not enough guys on the bench. So you're going to see a scrappy team that plays hard. And I think, by the end of the year, it's really going to gel together. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to sneak into district this year. So I definitely think you're going to see a really scrappy team out there that's not afraid of a little competition.
I know we're going to be looking forward to seeing how that goes. Now, just a quick question. You won't have to play a team 6 or 7 times this spring season, will you?
Yeah, back in that 15U season, Mitch, I think we played 8 times. At a certain point, it was just ridiculous. No, usually varsity-wise, obviously, you're not going to. However, I have a great relationship with Coach Rassisi over at Sandy Valley. It wouldn't surprise me if our JV teams play each other 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It's a team close to us. I have a great relationship with him. So as far as JV wise, maybe, but like I tell the kids, you've never looked in the paper and seen a JV score, especially when it comes to JV. Just be happy you're playing, because so many teams will just cancel a JV game, just get the varsity guys more field time. So if we play Sandy Valley 6, 7, 8 times, great, go play like it's your last game of the year, because those are games you got to have.
Well, Coach, we really do appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Best of luck to you and your players for the upcoming spring campaign.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Good luck, Coach. Thank you.
As Coach Stephen Scott of Newcomerstown High School will be back right here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show right after this. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Are you trying to increase your speed, quickness, vertical leap, and agility? If so, NST Sports Performance is for you. NST trains athletes ages 5 through pro. NST designs each program specific to the athlete's needs, goals, and sports. For more, visit nstsports.com. Locations in North Canton and New Philadelphia. It's nstsports.com.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Get out of the dugout and onto the field with help from Velocity Sports. Velocity Sports is a baseball and softball training academy with locations in North Canton and Canal Fulton. Our new Canal Fulton features 10,000 square feet of training space with 6 cages for hitting and pitching and a large commercial weight room. Velocity Sports will sharpen your skills and get you in the starting lineup. For more info, go to velosportsohio.com.
Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, final segment, Mitch, before we dive into our final topic. Thoughts on the Browns re-signing Josh Dobbs for a 1-year deal to be Deshaun Watson's backup?
Hey, man, I like Dobbs when he was here. The Pastronaut is what the nickname, I believe, is what he is getting because he obviously has that degree with NASA and space engineering or whatever it may be. So there was talk that Andrew Berry regretted not being able to keep Josh Dobbs last year. And so he brings him back 1 year, $2 million guaranteed deal. I like it. I like it a lot. I think he is a solid backup to Deshaun Watson moving forward for this next season.
Yeah, I felt kind of bad when he had to step in for that Titans end of the season game and had that crazy fumble that led to the Jaguars getting into the playoffs. So it's good to see him maybe getting another shot. All right, so then we go into the last one, which is the meaningless World Baseball Classic. And by meaningless, I mean maybe the hottest sporting event out there alongside March Madness right now. You know, the whole discourse that we've been seeing over the last week, and I think we might have talked about it in our last show, has just been kind of shrug inducing for me. Like, yeah, I'm a person who for years always liked the idea of the World Baseball Classic, but I never thought it would actually catch on the way it has over the last couple of weeks. Now that it has, I'm kind of looking at it like, oh, it's really cool that people are getting on it. And then I start seeing stuff like, oh, you know, this guy hits a home run. He's like, that was like game 7, man. That was like unlike anything home run I've ever seen. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's all right. That's cool. Good for you, man. And, you know, some people are being like, oh, well, you know, we need to. My whole thing about this is I still understand why people who are particularly around here may not see it as the World Cup of baseball that I think a lot of countries are now embracing. And it's fantastic. I think we are kind of getting that sort of setup now to where a lot of countries will be able to invest in the future towards this event. We're going to get more star power potentially. The star power from this one, by the way, is much better than the one in 2017. And I'm curious to see where this goes. And I'm curious to see if tonight is going to be the most watched baseball game of the decade so far, because we're going to have the Americans versus the Japanese, and it's going to be Trout versus Ohtani potentially on the mound if he is a relief appearance. I didn't think I'd be this much invested in a preseason baseball game. Here we are.
I'm glad you mentioned this could be the most watched game of the decade. Mitch, this could be the most watched game all time. And I actually have the numbers here from Baseball Doesn't Exist Twitter page. So Japan in one of their tune-up games versus the Oryx Buffaloes was watched by 36 million people in Japan. Japan versus Korea was over 55 million viewers. Japan versus Italy was over 62.5 million viewers. The most watched World Series game was 54.5 million in 1980. So there is a very realistic possibility that tonight the World Baseball Classic Championship could be the most watched baseball game of all time. And I'm excited. I personally loved it. The U.S., Mitch, really had to kind of get some help in pool play to get out of there. And sure enough, Canada lost. And now here we are. You mentioned the stars and how much more loaded it is. Mitch, you have guys like Mike Trout, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto, 3 names just right away. This is their first ever World Baseball Classic. The U.S. has so many good baseball players that some were left off this roster because of how many people wanted to play. And I think now there's going to be even a bigger influx of Americans that want to play in the next one, because you're seeing how much fun this is. You're seeing the pure and raw emotion from every team playing representing their country. And I'm very excited. You have Merrill Kelly tonight. He is with the Diamondbacks starting for Team USA versus the left-handed pitcher Amanaga going for Japan. He's 0-0, 2.25 ERA with 5 Ks so far in the World Baseball Classic. Obviously, there's pitch limits, pitch counts in pool play. That's why some of these guys don't have bigger numbers for as many games as they played. Tonight for Japan, which even more of a reason to watch to see what the USA hitters, some of the best players in all of baseball, can do versus someone like Shohei Ohtani. And I think what's very interesting is Lance Lynn of the Chicago White Sox. He's on Team USA's roster. He was on the Chris Rose podcast the other day, Mitch, they asked him, hey, will you pitch? And he said, I called the White Sox. They said, absolutely not. I'm not allowed to pitch. I'm done. So I'm going to be there. They told him, they said, well, Ohtani's pitching. Lance Lynn was, well, if Ohtani's pitching, I'm calling the White Sox back and telling them I'm pitching. Like, I have to pitch. And really, I'm hoping Team USA wins. But if they were to lose tonight, Mitch, and it's because of the lack of pitching, I'm really wondering if this team and the players they have can recruit some more of the United States men to come pitch. I mean, Mitch, think about some of the top pitchers right now. Now, obviously, this is another 4 years away. So will Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer really be able to pitch there? Probably not. But you still have people like Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, Corbin Burns, our own Shane Bieber, not Justin Bieber, Shane Bieber. I mean, Mitch, if they got the top players from the United States to play, this team could realistically be a juggernaut to go up against. But listen, it looked like Japan was dead in the water last night, down 3-0 to Mexico. Randy Arozarena, Mitch, had been the hottest hitter in the World Baseball Classic. I believe at one point he was hitting over 480 when it came to bracket play. It's just so much fun. The emotion, obviously, Trey Turner, you kind of foreshadowed it, saying that's the biggest home run he's hit. He's played in 43 career postseason games, played in a Game 7, played in the World Series, said it was the biggest moment of him or of his career so far. It's just fun. And I personally wish the emotion you see on the field, you could see more of in the MLB. Maybe not striking out a batter in the 5th inning and you just erupt and dance off the mound like some of these other countries have done. But the emotion you see from these players, I believe, is so good for the game of baseball. And you see it in college, you see it in the World Baseball Classic. I think a lot of people want to see it in Major League Baseball, and we'll have to see if that's something that maybe comes about.
Oh no, it'd be very good to get the names out there to the international audience, and that's gonna be interesting. The demographics between the Japanese viewership and American viewership, because U.S. viewership, or U.S. population rather, is more than double the population of Japan, 300 million to 125 million. But those numbers that Japan is able to produce, very fascinating to me compared to what I might see from American audiences tonight. And I think it's good that they're having it on a Tuesday night compared to what you would usually have for the NCAA tournament in the weekend days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's not going to take a large chunk out of the audience that would be watching the baseball game on, I believe, FS1 tonight, if I'm not mistaken. Which is, it's a fine channel to have it on. It's not like NBC or anything, but it works in it well enough. But yeah, I'm hoping for an American victory tonight. I'm hoping for just a good baseball game. I'm hoping for people to really embrace a sport that I enjoy, just even if it's for one night. Let's just get this one night for sure. And then who knows what's going to happen in baseball for the future. Big bases, pitch clock, and all. So that is it here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud, courtesy of Spotify for podcasters. You can also find us on here on YouTube, obviously. You should be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And you can find us on all of our pages, at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla. Mitch, what's the fact of the day?
Mitch, you know the game Candyland?
I do remember Candyland, yes.
That game was actually made in the 1940s by a school teacher to entertain children who were hospitalized with polio because the color system required no reading. So the young kids could easily play. And now it has blossomed into one of the top children board games that I believe everybody's practically played.
Yeah, that's not there's no slides that you have to go down if you land on them, right? Or am I thinking of another game?
I think you're thinking of Chutes and Ladders.
That's what I'm thinking. Well, I knew what Candyland was, but I for some reason thought, like Chutes and Ladders, there was a thing where if you land on a slide, you got to go down the slide. I know there's just like different candy bits. I haven't played a board game in over a decade. So that is all the time we have here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Thank you so much for listening or watching.